"Sir, my sister is freezing," said the alien girl. The human took off his coat. The orbital transit station Kepri 9 drifted in silence between two dim stars, its long metal body glowing faintly against the dark. Built centuries ago by cold-adapted species, the station was designed to conserve heat, not create it. The temperature in most public corridors hovered just above freezing by human standards, and during power ration cycles, it dropped even lower. For most species that passed through, this was comfortable. For humans, it was dangerous. That was why humans were rare here. Elias Ward walked slowly through one of the older corridors, his boots echoing softly on the steel floor. He was a maintenance engineer contracted for emergency repairs only. His breath fogged faintly in front of him as he checked the readouts on the wrist console strapped over his glove. Power flow was unstable again. Another ration cycle had begun earlier than scheduled. He frowned. Someone had messed up the timing. Elias pulled his heavy insulated coat tighter around himself. It was old, patched in places, but well-made. He had learned quickly that on Kepri 9, warmth was life. The station's artificial gravity hummed quietly, and distant machinery groaned like something half asleep. As he rounded a bend in the corridor, something felt wrong. The corridor ahead was darker than the rest. Only emergency floor lights were active, glowing a dull blue. Elias slowed, listening. That was when he heard it. A soft sound, uneven, almost like breathing, but strained. He stepped closer, heart picking up speed. Humans learned early that unexplained sounds in alien stations usually meant trouble. His hand hovered near the emergency beacon on his belt. Then he saw them. Two small figures huddled near a closed cargo hatch, curled tightly together. Their skin was pale with faint shimmering patterns that shifted slowly, like frost forming on glass. They were thin, too thin, and barely clothed in what looked like ceremonial wraps rather than proper thermal gear. Children, his mind said instantly. Alien children. Elias froze in place. Station regulations flashed through his thoughts. Do not interfere with other species' internal affairs. Do not make physical contact unless authorized. Do not expose your biology to unsafe conditions. One of the figures moved. The older one, he guessed older, lifted her head. Her eyes were large and dark, reflecting the blue floor lights. She looked straight at him, fear and exhaustion clear even without knowing her species well. She stood up slowly, legs shaking. Elias took a step forward without thinking. "Hey," he said gently, keeping his voice low. "Easy, I'm not going to hurt you." The girl swallowed. Her voice, when it came, was thin but clear, spoken in careful common speech. "Sir, my sister is freezing," she gestured behind her. The smaller one barely moved, her body trembling in short, weak jerks. Frost-like crystals clung to the edges of her skin patterns, a sign Elias recognized with a chill of fear. Even cold-adapted species had limits. Elias' training told him to call station security immediately. His instincts told him something else. He glanced down the corridor. No one else was around. Most traffic avoided this section during ration cycles. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "I don't know," the girl said honestly. The lights went dim, the warm halls closed. That explained it. Automatic bulkheads sealed off higher temperature areas during power loss. Anyone caught on the wrong side was left to endure. Elias cursed softly under his breath. He knelt a short distance away, careful not to crowd them. "What's your name?" "Salith," the girl replied. "This is Nira." Nira did not respond. Her breathing was shallow. Elias checked his console again. Temperature -2°C and dropping. For him, that was survivable for now, for them clearly not. He made a decision. Elias unfastened his coat. The cold bit into him instantly, like teeth against his skin even through his inner layers. He ignored it and gently draped the heavy coat around both girls, wrapping it as securely as he could. Salith gasped softly as warmth spread. Her eyes widened, not in relief at first, but shock. "You will die," she said quickly. "Humans cannot." "I'll manage," Elias interrupted, forcing a calm smile. "I've been colder." That was only half true. He adjusted the coat again, making sure it covered Nira fully. Almost immediately, her trembling eased slightly. Her breathing steadied. Salith stared at Elias as if he had done something impossible. "You gave us your heat," she said quietly. Elias shrugged, though his hands were already starting to feel numb. "That's kind of what coats are for." He activated his beacon. "Station security, this is Engineer Ward. I've got 2 juveniles in corridor D17. They need medical help. Now." The reply came quickly, sharp and irritated. D-17 is restricted during ration. They're freezing, Elias cut in. Send help. There was a pause, then acknowledged. Elias leaned back against the wall, ignoring the way the cold seeped deeper now that his main insulation was gone. He focused on breathing slowly. Salith sat close to her sister, holding her protectively. She watched Elias with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Why? She asked. Why what? Why help us? She said. Others passed, they did not stop. Elias thought about that. He had seen the way aliens looked at humans, dangerous, unpredictable, too emotional. He supposed this moment fit that idea. Because you asked, he said simply. She tilted her head as if trying to understand the logic. Footsteps echoed faintly in the distance. Elias let out a slow breath of relief. You'll be warm soon, he said. Medical bays are heated. Salith hesitated, then spoke again. This will be remembered. Elias chuckled weakly. I doubt that. But Salith did not smile. The station lights flickered once more as the temperature dipped again. Elias felt it in his bones. Still, he stayed where he was between the sisters and the worst of the cold, waiting. He had no idea that this small, simple act, one human coat in a freezing corridor, had already begun to change the way the galaxy would see his species forever. The station security team arrived faster than Elias expected, their boots striking the metal floor in sharp rhythm. 3 figures emerged from the dim corridor lights, 2 tall, insect-like guards wrapped in layered armor, and a smaller floating drone that scanned the air constantly. Cold mist swirled around their feet as they stopped several steps away. The lead guard's compound eyes focused first on the alien girls, then on Elias. The guard's voice came out flat through a translator. Human engineer, step away from the juveniles. Elias did not move. They're still stabilizing, he said, teeth chattering slightly now. The smaller one was close to hypothermic collapse. Give it a minute. The guard tilted its head, clearly confused. You are exposed. Your thermal protection is insufficient. I know, Elias replied. I made a choice. The drone drifted closer, its scanner beam passing over Elias' body. A sharp tone sounded. Warning, human core temperature declining, medical risk detected. Salith pulled the coat tighter around her sister, her eyes flicking between the guards and Elias. She stepped forward just enough to place herself slightly in front of Nira. He gave us warmth, she said firmly. Do not take it away. The guards paused. That alone was unusual. Most species did not allow juveniles to speak during security operations. The second guard finally spoke. This corridor is restricted during ration cycles. How did you come to be here? Salith answered before Elias could. The warm passage closed. We were separated from our escort. The guards exchanged a low-frequency signal between them, silent but meaningful. The station had strict rules about diplomatic observers. Losing track of them was a serious error. Medical team is en route, the lead guard said at last. Human, you will accompany them. Elias nodded, relief washing through him. His fingers felt stiff and his arms were starting to ache from the cold. As they waited, the corridor seemed to grow even quieter. The hum of the station felt louder now, like a distant heartbeat. Elias leaned his head back against the wall and focused on staying awake. He had been trained to recognize the signs, slowing thoughts, heavy limbs. Hypothermia was not dramatic. It was gentle, dangerous, and sneaky. Salith noticed. You are failing, she said softly. I'm fine, Elias replied automatically. That is untrue, she said. Your pupils are dilated, your breath is irregular. Elias smiled weakly. You'd make a good medic. She studied him for a long moment. Humans are strange, she said finally. Your kind is classified as heat-dependent and aggression-prone, yet you surrendered your protection without demand or command. Elias shrugged again, though it took effort now. Classifications miss things. Before she could respond, the sound of hurried footsteps approached again. This time, a medical team arrived, 2 tall, furred aliens wearing insulated medical suits, followed by a hovering stretcher unit radiating warmth. As soon as the stretcher activated, a wave of heat washed over the corridor. Elias closed his eyes briefly, fighting the urge to move closer. The medics quickly assessed Nira, gently lifting her onto the stretcher and wrapping her in thermal fields. She will recover, one of them said after a scan. Cold stress but no permanent damage. Salith let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for a very long time. The medic then turned to Elias. You, human, sit. Elias tried to stand straight but nearly stumbled. One of the guards caught his arm easily and guided him onto a portable bench near the stretcher. "Remove remaining outer layers," the medic instructed. Elias obeyed slowly. His hands barely worked now. As the medics adjusted the thermal output around him, Salith watched closely. Her expression was unreadable, but her attention never left Elias. "You could have waited for help," she said. "You could have activated your beacon and kept your coat." "Yes," Elias agreed. "I could have. Why did you not?" Elias thought about that as warmth slowly returned to his body, bringing sharp pins and needles pain with it. He winced but answered honestly. "Because sometimes waiting means someone else gets hurt," he said, "and I didn't want that on my conscience." Salith repeated the unfamiliar word softly. "Conscience." The medics finished stabilizing Elias and stepped back. "You will need rest," one said. "Report to Medical Bay 3 after debrief." The guards nodded and signaled for movement. As the stretcher began to glide away with Neera, Salith hesitated. She turned back to Elias. "You did not know who we were," she said. "You had no assurance of reward." "No," Elias said. "Didn't cross my mind." She placed one delicate hand over her chest, a gesture Elias did not recognize. "Then understand this, human engineer. What you did will be recorded exactly as it occurred." Elias smiled tiredly. "Hope your report's not too hard on me." She did not smile back. As they moved down the corridor, Elias noticed something odd. The guard's posture toward him had changed. Where there had been distance and caution before, there was now respect, or at least uncertainty. The debrief was short and strangely polite. Station officials asked questions about timing, location, and his decision-making process. Elias answered simply, sticking to facts. He did not embellish. He did not defend himself. When it was over, he was cleared to leave. Medical Bay 3 was warmer than any place Elias had been on the station. He lay back on the padded surface, staring at the softly glowing ceiling panels. His body ached, but his mind was restless. He kept thinking about Salith's eyes, the way she had watched everything. The way she had spoken of records and remembrance. Several hours later, Elias was released with instructions to rest. He stepped back into the station's main ring, expecting life to continue as normal. It didn't. People stared, not openly, but enough that he noticed. Conversations paused when he passed. A pair of traders whispered urgently as he walked by. Even species that usually ignored humans entirely seemed aware of him now. His wrist console chimed. A message notification blinked. Summons, Station Oversight Chamber. Immediate attendance required. Elias sighed. "Of course," he muttered. The oversight chamber was rarely used. It was a wide circular room designed to hold representatives from dozens of species at once. When Elias entered, only a few seats were occupied, but the atmosphere was heavy. At the center stood Salith. She was no longer wrapped in the coat. Instead, she wore formal attire woven with faintly glowing symbols. Neera stood beside her, fully recovered, watching Elias with quiet curiosity. Elias stopped short. "You're feeling better?" Neera nodded. "Warm," she said simply. Salith turned to face the assembled officials. "We have concluded our preliminary observation." Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. "Our mission," Salith continued, "was to evaluate humanity's behavioral responses under unscripted stress conditions." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Elias stared. "You were testing us." "We were observing," she corrected calmly. "Your species was unaware. This was intentional." The lead station official looked deeply uncomfortable. "And your findings?" Salith's gaze shifted to Elias. "When faced with the suffering of strangers," she said, "a human surrendered personal safety without hesitation. No authority compelled him. No reward motivated him." The room was silent. "This behavior contradicts existing models," Salith said. "Therefore, those models are incomplete." Elias swallowed. He suddenly wished very much that he was somewhere else. "This incident," Salith concluded, "will be forwarded to the Galactic Council in full." Neera stepped forward then, holding something carefully in her hands. Elias recognized it immediately. His coat. It had been cleaned and carefully folded. Neera offered it back to him. "Thank you," she said. Elias accepted it slowly, emotion tightening his chest. "You're welcome." As he left the chamber, he felt the weight of unseen eyes on his back. He did not yet understand the full meaning of what had begun. But he knew, deep down, that the galaxy had just taken its first real look at humanity. And it had seen something unexpected. The days after the Oversight Chamber meeting did not return to normal. On Kepri 9, nothing ever truly did. Elias noticed the change the moment he stepped out of his assigned rest quarters. The corridor lights seemed brighter, or maybe it was just the way people reacted now. Aliens who once walked past him without a glance now paused. Some stared openly, others quickly looked away. A few inclined their heads in gestures that were not part of standard station etiquette. Elias kept his eyes forward and his pace steady. He did not like attention. He was an engineer, not a symbol. He fixed broken systems and replaced worn parts. That was all. Or at least that was all he wanted to be. His wrist console chimed again. Another message. This one carried a priority code he had never seen before. Directive, remain on station. Do not depart without authorization. Elias stopped walking. Great, he muttered. He leaned against the wall and read the message twice more, hoping he had misunderstood. He had not. Someone very high up wanted him exactly where he was. Across the station, Salith stood in a quiet observation room, watching the same corridors through layered holographic displays. The room was warm, carefully controlled to suit both her species and her sister's recovery needs. Nira sat nearby, legs folded beneath her, watching Elias' image move through the station feeds. He does not look important, Nira said. Salith's eyes remained focused. Importance is not always visible. He looks tired, Nira added. Salith's gaze softened slightly. Yes. The doors behind them opened with a soft hiss. An elder of their species entered, tall and graceful, their skin patterns glowing faintly with slow-moving light. The elder's presence filled the room with quiet authority. You have sent your report, the elder said. Yes, Salith replied, unedited. The elder inclined their head. That has caused discussion. That was expected, Salith said. The elder studied the images on the displays. The human has become a focal point. He should not have to be, Salith said carefully. He did not seek this. No, the elder agreed, which makes the data more valuable, Salith turned. He is not data, the elder met her gaze calmly. He is both. Meanwhile, Elias was escorted to a new meeting room later that cycle. This one was smaller than the oversight chamber, but far more secure. The walls were lined with active translation fields and privacy dampeners. When he entered, several figures were already present. Some he recognized. Station officials, medical staff. Others were unfamiliar, tall, sharp-edged beings whose posture suggested military authority. Salith was there too. Elias stopped just inside the door. Am I in trouble? One of the military figures responded, their voice filtered and precise. That depends on your cooperation. Elias sighed and stepped forward. I've been cooperative so far. Salith watched him closely. He looked thinner than before. Tension clung to him in ways the station's instruments did not measure. This is not a disciplinary hearing, she said. It is an inquiry. Into what? Elias asked. Into humanity, she replied. The words hung in the air. Elias frowned. I'm just one human. Yes, Salith said. That is the problem. One of the officials leaned forward. Engineer Ward, your actions triggered an automatic escalation protocol. The Galactic Council has requested further observation. Elias crossed his arms. Observation of what? Human response to pressure, the official said. To authority, to risk. Elias felt a knot form in his stomach. You want to test us? We want to understand you, Salith corrected. By putting us in danger? Elias asked. Silence followed. Salith spoke again more softly. Understanding always carries risk. The inquiry lasted hours. Elias answered questions about his upbringing, his training, his service history. They asked about human values, about concepts like sacrifice and responsibility. He answered honestly, though sometimes he struggled to find words simple enough to translate. We are not special, he said at one point. We just don't like seeing people suffer when we can do something about it. A military observer tilted its head. That impulse is inefficient. Maybe, Elias replied, but it's human. When the session ended, Elias was exhausted. As he stood to leave, Salith approached him. You are angry, she said. I'm tired, Elias replied, and I don't like being treated like a specimen. That is understandable, she said, but your discomfort is temporary. The consequences of this process are not. Elias looked at her. What consequences? Salith hesitated. That alone was answer enough. Later that cycle, an incident occurred in the outer maintenance ring. A pressure failure sealed off a section of the station where several non-cold-adapted workers were performing repairs. Emergency bulkheads dropped, and the temperature began to fall rapidly. Automated systems flagged the situation as non-critical. Most of the trapped workers were expected to survive until rescue arrived. Most. Elias saw the alert before anyone else responded. He was already moving before the official channels activated. By the time station control realized what he was doing, Elias was halfway to the maintenance ring, pulling on his coat as he ran. Salith received the alert seconds later. Her heart, yes, heart, skipped. "He is moving toward the breach," Nira said, eyes wide. The elder's voice came sharp. "Stop him!" Security commands were issued, barriers activated, but Elias knew the station's layout better than most. He took older routes, bypassing newer security fields. When he reached the sealed section, the cold hit him like a wall. The workers inside were clustered together, some already struggling. Panic showed on faces not built for freezing environments. Elias activated the manual override. Alarms screamed. The doors opened. Elias rushed in, shouting instructions, helping workers move, lending his strength where machines failed. He felt the cold bite deep, sharper than before, but he did not slow. Salith watched the feed in silence. "This is unscripted," one of the observers said urgently. "Yes," Salith replied. "That is why it matters." By the time security forces arrived, the workers were out. Elias collapsed just beyond the threshold, his body shaking violently. Medical teams rushed in. This time the station did not whisper, it shouted. Footage spread faster than before, not just on HFY 9 but beyond it. A human engineer breaking protocol, risking death to save strangers again. Analysts debated motives. Some called it recklessness, others called it bravery. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Salith stood before them days later, her voice steady. "The human did not know he was being observed," she said. "He acted anyway," a council member spoke. "This behavior cannot be sustainable at a species level." Salith met their gaze. "It already is." When Elias woke, he was in a medical chamber warmer than any place he had ever been. His body ached, but he was alive. Salith stood nearby. "You should have waited," she said. Elias managed a weak smile. "They were freezing." She looked down at him. "Do you know what you have done?" "I saved some people," he said. "Yes," she replied. "And you changed the question the galaxy is asking about humanity." He closed his eyes, exhausted. "I didn't mean to." "I know," Salith said. Outside the chamber, the galaxy watched. And this time, it was no longer asking whether humans were dangerous. It was asking whether it could afford to misunderstand them any longer. When Elias was released from the medical chamber, the station felt different. Not warmer, not brighter, but heavier, as if the air itself carried expectation. He walked slowly through the central ring, his coat back on his shoulders, his steps careful. His body was still weak, but his mind was clear. Too clear. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some aliens stepped aside to give him space. Others watched with open curiosity. A few looked unsettled, as if they were seeing something that did not fit their understanding of the universe. Elias did not like it. He stopped near a wide observation window and looked out into space. The stars were steady, uncaring. He wished he could be the same. Behind him, Salith approached quietly. She had learned how to walk softly around humans. "You are healing," she said. "I am," Elias replied without turning. "Physically." She stood beside him, also looking out at the stars. "The council session has ended," Elias exhaled slowly. "That sounds serious." "It is," Salith said. "They are divided." "About what?" he asked. "About your species," she answered. Elias turned then. "I didn't ask for this. I never wanted to represent humanity." Salith nodded. "That is understood, and yet representation has happened." Before Elias could respond, the station lights dimmed slightly. A low tone echoed through the corridors, an alert but not an emergency. Public announcement systems activated across HFY 9. "Attention all personnel, a diplomatic assembly is now in session. Non-essential movement is restricted." Elias frowned. "What kind of assembly?" Salith looked at him. "One that has not occurred for your species before." They were escorted to the Grand Concourse, the largest open space on the station. It was designed for trade, but now it had been cleared. Dozens of alien representatives filled the upper platforms, their shapes and colors forming a living mosaic. Translation fields shimmered in the air. At the center of the concourse stood a raised platform. Elias stopped walking. "Why am I here?" he asked quietly. Salith met his eyes. "Because the council requested you by name." "That's not comforting," Elias muttered. Nira appeared at Salith's side, holding her hand. She looked healthier now, her skin patterns bright and stable. When she saw Elias, she smiled. "You look warmer," she said. "Thanks," Elias replied, managing a small smile in return. They stepped onto the platform together. The noise of the concourse faded into silence. Every eye was on them now. A tall council speaker moved forward, their voice amplified but calm. "Elias Ward, human engineer, you stand before this assembly not as an official envoy, but as a subject of record." Elias swallowed. "Am I free to leave?" "Yes," the speaker said, "but your presence is requested." Elias glanced at Salith. She gave a small, steady nod. "Then I'll stay," Elias said. A ripple of reaction passed through the crowd. The speaker continued. "Two incidents have been reviewed. In both, you chose to endanger yourself to protect others of different species. You were not ordered, you were not rewarded." Elias shifted his weight. "I didn't think about it like that." "That is noted," the speaker said. "The question before us is not about you alone. It is about whether such behavior is individual or cultural." Another representative spoke, their tone sharp. "If this is typical human behavior, then humans are unstable allies. They will act without command." Elias frowned. "We act when people need help." "That is not efficient," the representative replied. Salith stepped forward. "Efficiency is not the only measure of survival," she said clearly. "My people tested humanity for restraint, self-interest, and caution. What we observed instead was responsibility." Murmurs spread. Another voice rose. "Responsibility can become interference." "Yes," Salith said, "and neglect can become cruelty." Silence followed. Nira tugged gently at Elias' sleeve. He looked down. "May I speak?" she asked softly. The assembly hesitated, then the speaker nodded. "You may." Nira stepped forward, small but steady. "When we were cold, no one else stopped. They saw the risk. They calculated. The human did not calculate. He felt." Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. "My sister says feeling is dangerous," Nira continued, "but I think feeling saved us." Elias felt his throat tighten. The speaker turned back to Elias. "Do all humans act as you do?" Elias thought carefully. This mattered. "No," he said honestly. "Not all. We argue, we disagree, we fail, but we teach each other that if you can help, you should, even when it costs you." "And if helping leads to your death?" the speaker asked. Elias answered without hesitation. "Then we hope someone else will help next time." The concourse was completely silent now. Far above, station sensors detected new arrivals, large ones. The alert systems chimed again, louder this time. The speaker paused as data streamed in. Salith's eyes widened slightly. "They are here already." "Who?" Elias asked. "The full delegation," she said, "from multiple systems." Screens activated around the concourse, showing massive ships emerging from jump space. Sleek, powerful, watching, the speaker straightened. "The Galactic Council has reached a provisional decision." Elias' heart pounded. "Humanity will be reclassified." A wave of reaction burst through the concourse. "From a developing species under observation," the speaker continued, "to a protected emergent ally." Elias stared. "Ally?" "Yes," the speaker said. "Your species will be granted limited autonomy within council space. No further covert testing will be conducted." Salith let out a breath she had been holding for days. "But," the speaker added, "this decision carries expectation. Humanity will be expected to uphold the principles demonstrated here." Elias nodded slowly. "We'll try." "That," the speaker said, "is all that can be asked." The assembly began to disperse, conversations buzzing with energy. Analysts debated already. Military planners adjusted projections. Philosophers argued meaning. Elias stepped down from the platform, legs weak. Salith followed him to a quieter corridor overlooking the concourse. "You did well," she said. "I just told the truth," Elias replied. "That is what frightened them," she said gently. Nira leaned against the glass, watching the ships outside. "Do you think the galaxy will be warmer now?" she asked. Elias considered the stars. "Maybe not warmer," he said, "but less cold." Salith looked at him then, really looked at him, not as a subject, not as data, as a person. "One action," she said, "revealed a pattern we could not ignore." Elias shook his head. "All I did was take off my coat." Salith smiled just slightly. "Sometimes," she said, "that is enough to change everything." Outside, the ships held position, waiting. And for the first time in a long time, the galaxy waited on humanity, not in fear, but in cautious hope. The days after the Council's decision passed quietly, but the quiet was different now. It was not empty. It was full, like the moment after a deep breath. Kepri 9 continued to function as it always had. Ships docked, cargo moved, power cycles came and went, yet something unseen had shifted. The station was no longer just a place between stars. It had become a reference point, a memory. Elias Ward returned to work. He insisted on it. Station officials offered him a temporary advisory role, a symbolic position meant to keep him visible. Elias declined politely. He did not want to stand on platforms or sit in chambers. He wanted to fix things. Broken systems made sense. People were more complicated, so he walked the maintenance corridors again, tools in hand, coat on his shoulders. The difference was how others treated him now. A tall, scaled trader stepped aside to let him pass and gave a respectful nod. A pair of station guards acknowledged him openly. Even species that had once avoided humans now greeted him with cautious warmth. Elias nodded back, uncomfortable but kind. He did not think he had earned any of it. Salith observed these changes closely. She spent long hours reviewing incoming transmissions from across Council space. Reports arrived constantly, not just about Elias, but about humans. A human freighter crew diverting course to assist a stranded alien ship. A human medic staying behind during an evacuation to treat wounded non-humans. Human diplomats refusing favorable terms if they disadvantaged weaker systems. Patterns were forming. "They are consistent," Nira said one cycle, sitting beside Salith as the data scrolled past. "Yes," Salith replied, "and still imperfect." Nira tilted her head. "Is that bad?" Salith thought for a moment. "No, it makes them real." Later that cycle, Salith requested a private meeting with Elias. They met near the same observation window where they had spoken before, stars drifting slowly beyond the glass. "The Council has finalized its resolution," Salith said. Elias leaned against the railing. "Sounds serious." "It is permanent," she replied. "Humanity's status has been elevated fully, no longer emergent, no longer provisional." Elias exhaled slowly. "That happened fast. Only because the foundation was already there," Salith said. "You revealed it." Elias shook his head. "I didn't build anything." "No," she agreed. "You opened a door." Silence stretched between them, comfortable this time. "What happens now?" Elias asked. "Now," Salith said, "the galaxy adjusts." The adjustment was not easy. Some species resisted the change. They questioned human unpredictability. They feared emotional decision-making. There were debates, protests, even quiet acts of defiance in distant systems, but there were also invitations. Humans were asked to assist in disaster zones, to consult on survival training, to mediate disputes where empathy mattered as much as logic. Humanity did not accept every request. They learned quickly that helping did not mean controlling. Elias followed these developments from a distance, often reading reports late at night in his quarters. He saw his species struggle, argue, adapt. He saw mistakes made and corrected. Through it all, one phrase appeared again and again in Council summaries. Human response prioritizes life. Weeks later, a small ceremony was held on Kepri 9, not a grand one, no massive assembly. Just a quiet gathering near the central hub. Salith stood beside Nira, both wearing formal markings of their people. Elias stood opposite them, hands awkwardly clasped. Nira held a familiar object, the coat. It had been carefully preserved, its fabric reinforced with alien materials that would prevent decay. Symbols were etched gently along the inner lining, glowing faintly. Salith spoke. "Among my people there are objects that represent moments of truth. This will be one of them." She offered the coat to Elias. Elias stared. I thought it belonged to history now." "It does," Salith said, "and to you." He took it slowly, feeling the weight, not physical but emotional. "What does it mean?" he asked. "It will be displayed," Salith said, "as a record. But it will also remain yours, because history should remember that it was worn by a person, not a symbol." Elias swallowed. "Thank you." Nira stepped closer. "When I feel cold," she said, "I remember that warmth can be shared." Elias smiled softly. "That's a good thing to remember." As the ceremony ended, Elias felt a strange sense of closure. Not an ending, but a settling. Months passed. Eventually, Elias' contract on Kepri 9 ended. He was offered extensions, promotions, even a role as a permanent human liaison. He declined them all. Instead, he took a position aboard a civilian repair vessel that traveled the outer systems. It fixed stations others forgot, helped where infrastructure failed. Quiet work, necessary work. On his first departure, Salith and Nira came to see him off. "You are leaving," Salith said. For a while, Elias replied, there's a lot out there that still needs fixing. Salith studied him. You could have chosen comfort. Elias shrugged. Comfort's not how we grow. Neera hugged him without hesitation. Elias froze, then carefully returned the gesture. Stay warm, she said. He laughed softly. I will. As his ship pulled away from the station, Elias watched Kepri 9 shrink into the distance. He felt no pride, no sense of achievement, only quiet hope. Far away in council halls and alien schools, the story was told and retold. Not with exaggeration, but with care. A human. A cold corridor, a coat given without hesitation. It became a lesson, not about heroism, but about choice. Long after Elias moved on, long after Kepri 9 was upgraded and rebuilt, that lesson remained. The galaxy learned that humanity was not defined by its strength alone. It was defined by what humans were willing to give up when someone else needed it more. And in a universe that had grown used to calculation and distance, that simple truth changed everything.